What is up, Colts fans? We're here with yet another live stream this week. I feel like this is, like the fourth or fifth show that we've kind of done with the site this week. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. And we're back with another show, and I'm here with my buddy Andrew Moore. And before we get started here, I want to give a great shout out to all of you guys. We hit records at our site this month in terms of views and just people kind of trying to connect with the site and stuff. So big shout out to everything that you guys have kind of, been tuning in. I mean, I know it's been a crazy month. Andrew, how's kind of this month been for you personally with everything going on?
Man, it's probably been the busiest month since I came on board at Sports Illustrated. And
Right.
You're absolutely right. Shout out to all the people that have been coming to the site, been enjoying our content, engaging with our content. It's been crazy to see the support that Colts fans have been giving us. So hopefully we can continue that into April, into the meat of draft season. And I'm excited for what's coming ahead. And I know Colts fans are as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then what's going on, guys? Yeah, we're here with another one. You guys can't get enough of us on the YouTube channel tonight. We're just going crazy all week, but it's the time. I mean, it's an exciting time for Colts fans. I mean, I feel like last year with the Carson Wentz trade, there was people that were big supporters of it. I mean, I'm sure we all got to a point where we could at least support it a little bit, but for the most part, it was a pretty kind of middling type of trade when it came to Colts fans. I feel like this one, with Matt Ryan, especially with what the Colts gave up, I feel like universally, we're kind of all on board with it. So it's kind of a fun time to be a Colts fan, right? I mean,
yeah.
I haven't seen many people against it. Have you even seen like anybody really against the trade?
I mean, I've seen a couple here and there, but it's almost probably 80, I would say 85-15 people on board with the Matt Ryan trade. And I think even just listening to his introductory press conference, you got a different feeling coming from Matt Ryan than you did with Carson Wentz. With Carson Wentz, it almost seemed like he was just relieved to be out of Philly, and that was kind of what his main focus was. But with Matt Ryan, it feels like this guy's motivated. He's nowhere finished. He wants to come in and he wants to compete for a championship, and I don't think he's going to be happy unless they're doing that. So just a completely different feel, and I think Matt Ryan, kind of like what my piece was this week, Matt Ryan is what the Colts need right now, and the Colts need Matt Ryan just as much. So
yeah, for sure. And I had Matt Carrolley on last night, a former Falcons fan, or a paused Falcons fan is what he called himself last night on the stream. And yeah, he kind of said all the same things. I mean, Matt Ryan is not done, and that's the biggest thing that he was telling me is like, if we had to take bets basically on how long Matt Ryan would be here in Indy, I would bet closer to 4 years than I would to 1 year or maybe even 2 years. I think he's got plenty in the tank, and it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if he, goes past these 2 years that are left on his contract, because it just seems like a perfect fit for both these guys here. If Zach is against the trade, we're all against it. Not necessarily, because I was crying about the Rock Ya-Sin trade for a few minutes on Twitter, and most people were telling me that it was a good trade. And I know it was a good trade. I'm still very upset and very sad about it. So not necessarily, although I will say there are a lot of people who, like for instance, I see a lot of people wanting Rasheem Green all of a sudden on Twitter, and I don't think many people who want him even know who he is. Where
right.
I've been a big Rasheem Green fan since he was a draft prospect. I've followed his career in Seattle quite a bit. That's why I'm kind of pounding the table for him. But yeah, I mean, it comes with the territory,
Right. And the thing is, I get where you're coming from too. I mean, Rock's a good young player, and the kid works his butt off. It just comes to that point where proven pass rusher is greater than a young solid corner. And that's what the Colts need right now. It's what better fits the Colts scheme under Gus Bradley. And I thought it was a home run trade for the Colts on that one as well.
Right. My rational part of my brain is saying, this is a great trade. Irrational part of my brain, emotional part of my brain, I'm still pretty sad about it. I can't really, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get over it, but it's fine. It's fine. We got our boy Matt here. What's the next move? Keelan Cole, Tyrann Mathieu, Solomon Thomas, Rasheem Green. I don't know. I really don't think it's going to be too much left. I mean, they have I think they're at like 22 million, I think, in cap space right now.
After the restructure, came out today of Matt Ryan's contract. They're at around 22 million.
Right. So you got to keep in mind with that, they have, I think, 9 to 10 draft picks right now. Knowing Chris Ballard, he'll probably trade back and get even more because it's just what he does. So they have to account for the money that's going to come in with those draft picks, and then just the money that's going to be needed to fill out the roster. Because as of right now, they're probably at 40 guys who are going to make the 53 that they currently have signed. They're going to need an additional, couple guys with that in terms of depth. So it kind of limits what you can do in terms of paying, big money for a Tyrann Mathieu, unless you're going to do more restructures or Rasheem Green or that might be AJ Green. I'm pretty sure it's Rasheem Green that you mean by Green there, but it could be AJ Green too. I mean, it kind of goes to the same thing there. So I mean, they're going to need that money for draft picks. They're going to need it just to fill out the roster. I mean, because like Matt says here, it's approximately $6 million per draft slots and stuff. Just to fill out the remaining spots on the roster, it might be 1 year, $1 million contracts right across the board, which might take up most of that cap space. So I don't really foresee anything too big. I'm sure they're going to be talking to guys like Tyrann Mathieu. They're going to be talking to all the Gus Bradley defenders that have ever overlapped with him, because that's just what Gus Bradley does. But what do you think, Andrew? Do you think they swing for any of the like the 3 big fish that are still out there?
I mean, possibly Tyrann Mathieu, but I'm thinking if they do make a move, it's going to be probably cheap, prove-it deals. I mean, we talked earlier in the week about maybe Julio Jones, T.Y. Hilton. The Colts still think he can play, but there really hasn't been talks. But when you're thinking about this, I mean, it's always great to think about those big names, but the Colts still need to get depth along the offensive line. They still need to replace and the defensive line. Yeah, there's still depth issues at corner, at safety, especially because Andrew Sendejo's not there, George Odom's not there, Julian Blackman is coming off a torn Achilles. Thank God. But there's a lot of depth pieces that the Colts still need to add, and then, I mean, even Jack Doyle, they haven't replaced Jack Doyle yet. They really only have Mo Alley Cox and Kylan Granson on the roster. So when you're dealing with only having about, I mean, that 22 million goes away quick, especially like Matt mentioned. 6 million of that will be dedicated to the guys that are being drafted. So you take that 6 million away, then you're back to that 16 again. So 16 million for quite a few guys, especially the depth, even if they are on minimums, it's going to eat away at that cap pretty quickly.
Right. Then we got another question here from the UK. Appreciate you joining from the UK. We got double down at wide receiver in the draft. Thoughts on John Mechie and Bo Melton? I think they have the traits that Ballard might like, despite being under his size threshold. Have you watched either of those guys yet, Andrew?
I've watched a little bit of John Mechie. Bo Melton, I have not. John Mechie, I could see. I know he's coming off an injury, and really the Colts under Chris Ballard, if they strike for a guy that's coming off an injury or has had an injury leading up into the draft, they must really, really be sold on them. And that could be the case with John Mechie. I still think with the amount of talent and the amount of the various prospects in this draft, I think the Colts are going to have plenty of options that fit that over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, explosive athlete threshold that they really like at wide receiver. So like the Christian Watsons, the Alec Pierce, guys of that mold and that nature. So John Mechie obviously could be an option, but I still think the Colts will probably go towards those bigger guys.
Yeah, I think Mechie, if they're going to take an outlier higher, like, an outlier for what they want, they're going to take one of those guys higher. He can make a ton of sense. But Bo Melton, I think, is super interesting because I've done the Builder Ballard series for years now, and for the most part, especially when it comes to receiver, edge rusher, and corner, he typically doesn't stray from his types. At receiver, he likes the 6 foot plus 200 explosive guys. Edge rusher, he likes the lengthy explosive guys. Corner, he likes the above 6 foot, above 200 pounds, like press guys. But he does on like day 3 of drafts, he will tend to go away from his trends for special team type guys or for guys that could have a unique role. I mean, we've seen it with DeMichael Harris, for instance. Does not fit whatsoever. They took DeMichael Harris as an undrafted free agent, and he even got some playing time. We've seen it with Isaiah Rogers. We've seen it with Kenny Moore. We've seen it with Danny Pinter, even Danny Pinter with his tiny arms, on day 3. And a lot of those guys have worked out. So Bo Melton, I think, is super interesting. I do think that I want to say Ed Dodds was at Bo Melton's pro day, which I thought was super interesting because who else are you watching at Rutgers pro day?
Right.
There's really nobody. You're there to watch Bo Melton, and Bo Melton's a freaky athlete, had a really good Senior Bowl, great combine. He's the type of guy where if you're going to tell me Ballard's going to take an outlier on day 3 at receiver, I think Bo Melton's the guy who makes sense. So I would honestly say Bo Melton more likely than John Mechie with the Colts. But I mean, either of those guys, I'm a big fan of both guys. I just don't know how much they fit kind of, what the Colts do. We got the real Mr. Colt. Speaking of Rock, do you think they add a veteran corner or draft another? What do you think, Andrew?
Honestly, I think probably at this point, I think they're probably going to go draft, because I think you can find it's easier to find and replace a corner rather than replace an edge rusher. So that's why I think the trade makes sense. We were kind of talking about that before we went on air. But the Colts have had success drafting corners. I mean, Isaiah Rogers comes to mind. I know they didn't draft Kenny Moore, but picking up Kenny Moore, Rock Ya-Sin certainly played out pretty well. I think there's a deep class of corners that you can find some good guys. And when looking at the free agent market, I mean, again, you could think of like a big name like Patrick Peterson still out there, but when you're really looking at the guys that I think would fit or that would make a difference, there's just really not that too many guys out there. I mean, Stephon Gilmore's a pipe dream if we're being really honest about it. So I think they're more likely to go the draft route to help get depth at corner.
Yeah, I think they'll do a move kind of like the TJ Carey move a couple years ago, where it's like a really cheap deal for a veteran who's had experience. But I don't think it's going to be anything too big there. I think they like Brandon Faison as a starting corner. I think they like Kenny Moore, obviously, as a starter and as a slot guy. And I think they're really impressed with Isaiah Rogers, which, I mean, there's no reason not to be after the year he just had. So I think they have 3 guys that they feel comfortable starting if they had to. But I do think we'll see, I think we'll see another veteran like a TJ Carey type. I think we'll see maybe like a day 3 draft pick as well. I don't think they're done at corner. I mean, again, we're what, 2 weeks into free agency?
Right.
We're not done yet, guys. Hey guys, excuse my French, but what the hell are they doing at wide receiver? Any predictions for what they will do? Again, Sam, I will say we're 2 weeks into free agency. Like, they'll be fine. I know Chris Ballard sometimes does let these positions in need kind of fester all off season, and we go into last year like we did with the edge rusher group, going like, oh man, this is gonna be bad. So it could happen like that with wide receiver, and we'll be all upset about it again. But I think they'll bring in a veteran or 2 just to fill out the roster, and I would put good money on 42 being a wide receiver. Like I feel very confident in saying pick number 42 is going to be a receiver in this type of class.
I would agree there. I think 42 is prime position for one of these bigger wide receivers, and I know the Colts are keeping a close eye on quite a few of them. But yeah, I would expect them to try to bring in a veteran wide receiver as well on a cheap prove it deal, because as of right now, I think the veteran wide receiver of the group is Paris Campbell. I think Paris Campbell is the one that's been there the longest. So
or Ashton Doolin might have come the same year, but
so
I don't know.
He could be. They're very close in age. So you definitely don't want your veteran wide receiver to be in year 4. So I mean, a guy like I mentioned in my article today, a guy like Julio Jones, if Colts can bring him in on a cheap prove it deal because of the injuries, I mean, we'll see what happens. The Colts have all offseason spoke highly of T.Y. Hilton. There hasn't been too many talks there, but it's always in the back. It's always a chance, I think, with T.Y. Hilton and the Colts. So I don't think they'll be in on Jarvis Landry. I don't think there's really an interest there, but I could see T.Y. Hilton or Julio Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for Julio Jones signing. I mean, to me, I've had a lot of people push back whenever I've said I'm all for it, especially on a 1-year deal, but like, I don't see the negative. I really don't see it. Like, the worst case scenario, say you sign him to a 1-year, $6 million deal, and that $6 million could get up to like 12 with incentives. right? Because Julio Jones is still Julio Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say that's the deal. I'm just throwing it out there. So worst case, he gets hurt in week 1, like Funchess years ago, and doesn't play, and you just lose out on $6 million you probably weren't going to use anyway. Best case is he looks like Julio Jones, and you get Julio Jones for a pretty easy contract, along with pairing with Matt Ryan, who's going to have that chemistry. I don't see the negative in signing him to a 1-year prove deal. I know a lot of people say like, "Oh, he's cooked" and all that, but like, who cares? It's either take a shot on Julio or throw out Paris Campbell, who probably will play less games than Julio this year. And I love Paris Campbell. I really want him to play, but like we can't rely on him. And Dizzy, mentioned something with that too. Are the Colts going to be putting too much on the plate of a rookie wideout by not signing a vet in free agency? Seems like the success of that group is too dependent on unproven guys, which I agree. As of right now, it's too dependent on unproven guys. But again, I think they're going to sign somebody, whether it's a AJ Green or Julio Jones or Keelan Cole. These guys aren't at the moment. These guys aren't difference makers, but they're at least quality depth. It's not. Right. We're not talking about Julio Jones from 2016, but we are talking about a guy who could be a pretty good player for you. So I think they'll bring in someone, but. In terms of the rookie wideout, the way to go with wide receivers now is draft. Mm-hmm. We've seen rookies come in, especially at pick. I want to say AJ Brown was pick 42 a couple years ago with the Titans. You're seeing these receivers, man. They are having success right out the gate. Michael Pittman Jr. had a pretty good rookie year, even though he was they were kind of slow playing him a little bit. So it might be a lot for a rookie, but that's the way to go right now with receivers.
These college teams are really preparing these guys for the NFL. It's not as big of a jump as it used to be with college wide receivers. So I don't necessarily, especially guys that maybe played at bigger schools and against tougher competition, I don't see it being a huge jump. I mean, we look at Michael Pittman Jr. playing in the Pac-12 all those years and really gaining that experience. So if you get a 4-year wide receiver who's got experience, I think they'll be just fine. But I think I'm a big stickler about this. Is I always listen to Chris Ballard after the season and in the combine or at this combine press conference, because the dude shoots it straight, and if you're listening well enough, he's going to drop those little nuggets for you. He said it at his press conference to end the year. While he has faith in the young receivers, they will still be looking to upgrade. And he also talked about it at the combine, where he said, I still have faith in Paris Campbell, but do we trust him to be our number 2 or number 3 wide receiver? And he said probably not at this point, because he's been so hurt. So I mean, Chris Ballard's not dumb. He knows they need to bring in a veteran wide receiver. They're not just going to all put it on the shoulders of an injury-prone Paris Campbell, a raw Desmond Patman or Mike Strawn, or Ashton Doolin, who's been a special temer his entire life.
We'll put it on Ashton Doolin. Yeah. We're cool with that. I'm actually cool with that. Andrew doesn't speak for me on that, but everything else he said, I agree with.
They'll be looking to add a veteran presence in there for sure.
Thoughts on Jelani Woods? Jelani Woods has been the star of the offseason right now. I mean, just an absolute freak show. I think people are going a little too crazy with it right now. I'm seeing a lot of tight end 1 stuff with him, and for the guide, I didn't break down tight ends, so I didn't go super deep in it. But I would think that, in my opinion, I think there's 5 or 6 guys I'd still take over him at tight end. But athletes like that don't grow on trees, so I'm always a fan of guys like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely rose his draft stock here in the last couple months, and I think he's a quality player. But I agree with you there. I think there are better, more rounded tight ends like a Trey McBride, like a Jeremy Rucker. Those are kind of a couple of my top 2 that I think will be impact players from day one. And Jelani Woods, I think, has great traits, and you're going to have a team that really bets on those traits, but as far as being a polished prospect, I think there's a few more guys that I would take over Jelani Woods.
Yeah, and I want you guys to watch my tight end 1. I was close on this for a bit, but I feel good now saying it. He didn't do any all-season workouts because he was hurt, but Cade Otton out of Washington, that's my tight end 1. So if you want to see who the best blocking tight end in the class, and one of my buddies actually said he was very Jason Witten as a receiver, that's my tight end 1 right there. We got Nation saying I want David Bell. I really don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it is either, because he's not the athlete that the Colts want. I mean, he's a great wide receiver, and he had success in the Big Ten, but when you're looking at just his pure explosive numbers and the kind of wide receiver he just doesn't fit that mold that Chris Ballard wants. So I think he's solid. I think he could have a very good career. I just don't think it's going to be with the Colts.
No, and then we're just gonna have everyone just listing receivers they like in the class. Do you think Sky Moore might be too small? I think he might be too small, but again, Chris Ballard makes exceptions sometimes for freak athletes, and Sky Moore is certainly a freaky athlete. So again, if he's going to go off of his trends, and that's my thing. Like, I try not to kind of be like a gatekeeper when I do the Build a Ballard stuff and being like, oh, don't get excited about this guy because it's never going to happen. But I'm just trying to give parameters of what the Colts actually draft. And if we look at every single receiver that Chris Ballard has ever acquired, ever acquired with the Colts, it's literally just DeMichael Harris and T.Y. Hilton are the only ones who have been on the 53 at any point who are below 6 foot. Like it just doesn't. Or I mean, T.Y. Hilton wasn't even his guy. T.Y. Hilton was the guy that was already here. So it's just like he just doesn't do it. But again, he makes exceptions for freaky athletes. He did so for Isaiah Rodgers at corner. And I'm telling you, I've never been more shocked by a selection than when I saw Isaiah Rodgers at corner, because I was like, there's no way he's taking this tiny corner. And then from talking more about like, I think I saw an interview with Mike DeReese where it's like, yeah, he was just drafted to be a special teamer. Like he was not drafted to be a corner. Right. So it's just not, he sticks to his types. And it's not, it's not me trying to gatekeep and saying like, don't like your Calvin Austins, don't like your Sky Moores, but just know that if Chris Ballard is going to take them, it's going to be an outlier from what he typically likes.
Right. And you and you kind of mentioned it, you typically see those moves on day 3 of the draft from the Colts. If they're going to take their shot on guys that don't necessarily fit their height, weight, speed measurements that they like to put in, it's typically going to be on those day 3 picks where you can take a shot on a guy.
Right. Do you think Rodgers can play well at starting outside corner considering his size? Honestly, the only thing on film that I came away with a negative, and I'm sure it's something he's going to work on all off season, because I mean we've seen year 1 to year 2 now. I mean he's getting better every single time he steps on the field. So I fully expect him to get better at. But the only concern I have, because we've seen small guys succeed in the NFL. I think my biggest comparison for him was Brent Grimes. A Pro Bowl type of corner, around the same size, right around the same speed. The only thing he needs to get better at is he needs to be stronger with how he attacks the catch point. He's got the ability to go up there and attack it. He's just not strong enough to break the hands of receivers and knock the ball out. But besides that, I mean, we're talking about a really good corner. He was really, really good last year. I mean, statistically speaking, Rocky Sin was the best corner on the Colts last year. And then you could probably say Kenny Moore just because he was targeted so much and he still had good production, but Isaiah Rodgers was right up there with those two. I mean, he had a really, really strong season last year.
Right. And most of the time when he was in there, he was at outside corner. So it's not like he's never played the position before. It's not like he was just coming in and playing the slot for Kenny Moore. Isaiah Rodgers was put outside, and the Colts have faith in him outside. I mean, I've heard from Darius Leonard, you hear from Kenny Moore, both of those guys, leaders on the team, when they talk about Isaiah Rodgers, they tell us that he's a dog, and I fully believe that. I mean, you could see that in how he trains, how he competes out there. I mean, this kid is a dog, and he's got that heart that you need as a cornerback to succeed. So I really don't have any concerns with him playing outside corner. Yes, he might be a little bit undersized, but I think he's already proven that he can more than hold his own on the outside.
Yeah, for sure. Apparently, Patrick Peterson and Honey Badger want to play together. Would be a sweet duo and a cheap deal. I mean, honestly, I think the Colts are one of the few teams that could afford that. So, I mean, if that's what they're fully convinced on doing, it could happen in Indy. So we'll see that. I mean, I'd be excited to see if that happened, because, I mean, those are two of my favorite college players of all time, and obviously great NFL players too. Matt says it was just hard to get a receiver before the Matt Ryan trade. Yeah, I mean, there was a tight end that they would have been able to sign if they had Matt Ryan at the beginning of free agency. So there was a tight end who went to Jacksonville that they were going to sign. They just didn't have a quarterback, so that kind of scared them off a little bit. So
And I think Chris Ballard even admitted that on Pat McAfee's show the other day, when Pat was asking what they were doing, and he kind of alluded to it, that they needed to get the quarterback in place, and that there was they were in on some guys, but those guys had legitimate concerns of who was going to be throwing the football to him, and Ballard said he understood. And honestly, how, if you're in that position and you're thinking, I mean, yeah, I'd like to go to the Colts, but do I really want Sam Ehlinger throwing me the ball? You're probably going to go somewhere else. So it's not hard to see why the Colts possibly missed out on some other options.
Right. I always say, when it comes to multi-year deals, the two things that matter the most are money and location. Mm-hmm. Those are the two things that matter the most. When it comes to 1 year deals, though, money and location are still number one, too. But then you get kind of into the nitty gritty of quarterback and just overall play, because then you're also playing for your next year's paycheck. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the Colts just really didn't have any of that stuff going for them. I mean, I love Indianapolis. I think it's a great city. I've been there multiple times, but it's not as attractive as a Las Vegas or Miami or California, Los Angeles, stuff like that. So if you don't have that going for you also don't have the quarterback. It's tough to attract these guys, and we saw that with the tight end that went to Jacksonville, played with a first overall pick quarterback, and gets to live by the beach with no state income tax. I feel like that. I mean, it's a choice that I would have made. Like, it makes a lot of sense. So I get it. Where the left tackle's at, dude, Matt Pryor.
We've got it. We've got the left tackle.
The left tackle.
I think people are sleeping on Matt Pryor, and I've been hammering this on a Colts podcast. Matt Pryor is a solid left tackle. I mean, you look at the film last year, and I've even popped it on here in the last week or so. You look at the film when he started for Eric Fisher against the Las Vegas Raiders and was going up against Yannick Ngakoue. He held his own. And I think he's a young enough player. He certainly has the size to play left tackle at 6'7" and 338 pounds, just something absurd like that. He's a big, strong man. So giving him a full offseason just to focus on left tackle specifically, giving him those reps in the offseason program, giving him those reps in training camp, and actually giving this kid a fair shot to start, I think he's earned that, especially with his play last year and how he was able to come in and perform pretty well at every single spot. So I definitely think the Colts, now, should they just focus solely and say they're done at left tackle because of Matt Pryor? No. They definitely need to add some competition there to make sure that they are getting the best option available to them out there. But I think people are sleeping on Matt Pryor. I really do.
Yeah, I think I actually wrote an article after that game saying, like, is Matt Pryor the future at left tackle? And I think my overall conclusion was, this was a good game, but we can't really derive much about what his future success would be from this one game. And I think that goes well with this situation we're in right now. I think he can be a solid player. There was nothing last year on his tackle film. Honestly, I think he started 5 games at tackle, 1 at left, like 4 at right tackle. And I think he started 1 game at right guard. And the only game I was concerned was his right guard game. The right guard game was terrible. But besides that, I mean, the right tackle film was good. Left tackle film was really good. I mean, I don't have too many concerns right now. But I am obviously of the mindset of, bring in another guy who can play, bring in a draft guy. Abraham Lucas, I think in round 3 is very much in play. He just fits literally everything that Chris Ballard likes in his prospects. I'd be very shocked if Abraham Lucas, if he's there at pick 73, the Colts don't take him. But, Matt Pryor, if he ends up being the starter day 1, I feel fine about it. I don't call that a gaping hole like some people are calling it. I really don't think it is.
Right. And I think I think the offensive line in general is just going to take a step forward, because you're probably not going to have an injured Quentin Nelson all year. You're not going to have an injured Ryan Kelly, and a Ryan Kelly that was dealing with an unfathomable family tragedy the past month of the season. Right. Danny Pinter, you and I both really like his promise and think he can play pretty solidly at right guard. I mean, I think we'd like to see Chris Reed come back as well, but I think I'd be fine with Danny Pinter. And then Braden Smith speaks for himself. So I think the Colts, I don't think this trend that the Colts were on last year of shaky play, I think they'll kind of step up and be back to form in 2022.
Right, completely agree. And then real Mr. Cold again. Here we got how do you feel about Christian Watson the 2nd, Ruckert in the 3rd, Max Mitchell in the 4th? I would have felt better about it weeks ago with I'm only talking about Max Mitchell in the fourth. I would have felt better about Max Mitchell in the fourth before his combine. But if you give me those first 2 picks, I really don't care about that last one there. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. You know,
I agree there. Christian Watson, I mean, he's phenomenal. You turn on his tape, and that guy's just such a freak. And I know you spoke with him a few weeks ago as well. Kid's got his head on straight. And Jeremy Ruckert, I think, is one of the better, well-rounded tight ends in this draft class. And I think he could be a nice weapon in the Frank Reich offense. So again, I think since the Colts are they're going to look to the draft because that's what they do best. They're going to look to add those young, athletic guys in the draft that can contribute right away on offense. And I think Watson and Ruckert both could do that.
Completely agree. And then Rahul here says about which tight end in the draft do you think the Colts would like the most? We just mentioned one right there who I think they're going to really like, but I think the one that screams Colts the most, and he might be tight end 1 when it comes draft day. He might be tight end like 5 or 6, but I hope I say his name right. I think it's Greg Dulcich out of UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first off, I mean, Jack Doyle had the beard. This guy has the hair. I mean, that's all. We're talking Kobe Fleener type hair, so we're already off to a good start there. But really good blocker, really athletic player. Had a really great combine, great Senior Bowl. Really big dude too. I mean, like he moves really well for his size. I think, like Chris Ballard. I like to guess at Chris Ballard's boards, and I'm usually wrong because Chris Ballard always does his own thing. But I think that would be his tight end 1. I feel pretty confident saying that would be his tight end 1 in this class.
Yeah, Dulcich really, I mean, he really stood out and got on my radar in the combine. And he's the one that he made me kind of look at some film on him, and I was pretty impressed. He's a very well-rounded tight end. Obviously, I love Jeremy Ruckert. I think the Colts would love to have him. And if they're looking for a direct replacement to Jack Doyle 2.0 is Jake Ferguson out of Wisconsin. So if he's available in the 6th round and the Colts haven't taken a tight end, they might just take Ferguson in that spot.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that one. I remember I think I did the draft primers or something before the Senior Bowl, and I was like, yeah, this guy's Jack Doyle. Like, that's who you want to go with there. We got a couple comments because we're just catching up on the comments here about the Julio stuff we were talking about. Same people saying they don't want Julio, want us to bring back Ty. There's literally no reason to bring in Ty instead of Julio. Like, if you bring back both, screw it. Like, that's fun. Like, I'll be cool with it. Like, maybe they can combine to play 16 games. Like, I'm cool with that. But and then Julio all day. I agree. I really do think they should bring in Julio.
Yeah, I think what Colts fans are thinking with their head instead of their heart, they're probably agree that they probably pick Julio over T.Y. Hilton at this point.
Right. And then what about Odell Beckham Jr. on an incentive-laden deal, hoping he can come back in the second half? It's tough with that one because, there's some reports that he might not be back until like December-ish or whatever. And, you want to bring a guy into a completely new offense where he might only play like a month like that. That's tough. I think he's going to go back to the Rams.
Yeah,
I don't see him going anywhere else.
I don't think a team like the Colts who aren't really loaded on talent can really afford that, and just to kind of stock a guy away until November or December. They need guys to be able to contribute all year. So I think on a team like the Rams where you already have a ton of talent, I could very easily see him going back, but I just don't think the Colts are equipped for that.
Right. Do you feel like Des Patman could be the odd man out in the wide receiver room? Man, we spent all last offseason talking about who's going to be the odd man out in this receiver room and all that, and they end up keeping all of them. Like, they didn't even move on from one of them.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't think he would be a trade because I really don't think he's going to be worth anything. I mean, we're talking he's going into his 3rd year and he's played like 20 snaps.
I think he's got 2 catches total. One of them on that touchdown in Arizona. But he wouldn't be a trade candidate. If anything, the Colts would cut him. And I mean, who knows? Chris Ballard has gone out of his way to mention Desmond Patton a couple times this offseason. So I think the Colts are still high on him and high on his potential. I know the kid works his butt off. I mean, he's very close with Michael Pittman Jr. as well, and those two are constantly training together all off season and during the season. I've even seen when Desmond Patton was kind of bulking up a little bit, I saw people saying they try to move him to as the move tight end, and you know, I wouldn't hate it if he worked on his route running a little bit, but I think both of those guys still have a lot of work to do to improve. We got to remember Michael Strawn was only active for a couple games last year.
Yeah, you know, I would only say as of right now, there's 3 receivers that I feel like are safe. You know, Michael Pittman Jr., Paris Campbell, just because it doesn't make sense to cut him, and then Ashton Doolin. Those are the only 3 who I would say are safe for next year. The rest, it's, you know, it's fair game. You know, whoever they add and stuff like that, you know, that'll play a big part. But you know, I really, when it comes to those guys, we'll have to see how offseason shakes out and stuff. We got the Mac attack. Maybe Matt will target the huge tight end in the red zone.
I mean, if he could catch the ball, that's all I'd like to see. He dropped he dropped some opportunities last year where Carson did put it on him pretty well, and he just kind of fumbled the bag. So, I mean, I like the Mo Alley Cox signing for 3 years at $6 million a year. It's not tight end 1 money, but I don't think Mo Alley Cox is a tight end 1. I think he's a great complementary piece, and he's somebody that you'd like to have in your offense, and hopefully he does continue to get better each and every year. And I think this year, with Jack Doyle retiring, we're going to see him get as much playing time and as much opportunity as he's ever had.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can only say it for so long that this is the year for Mo Alley Cox. Like, this is the year for that.
He's about 28 now, I think. So he's getting up there. He's no longer this guy that just came out of VCU. He's a guy that's been on the Colts for 4 years now. I think he's entering his 5th or 6th season. So at some point, it's like you can't just keep waiting for him to really come on. He is what he is at some point.
Yeah, he's a fine tight end too. He probably never get tight end 1 status, but you know, we'll see. If Pinter does move over to right guard, do we get a center in the draft late or a cheap vet? I really think bringing in Chris Reed just makes some. I really do think that's going to get done. Bringing back Chris Reed, you know, I know that he's going to have some interest across the league because he played really good last year when he stepped in, but I think bringing in Chris Reed, and the best part is if you do bring in someone like Chris Reed back, right? He's your backup right guard. He's your backup left guard. And then if Ryan Kelly goes down, Pinter slides over to center, and then Reed steps in, or Reed could step in at center because Reed's done that before too. So I think it'll just be a veteran like that again. I think it'll be that, or maybe a Will Fries. You know, Will Fries can kind of do the same thing. I know that they were pretty high on him after the offseason. I know going kind of into the offseason that they were just taking a shot on him in the 7th round, and then they came away pretty impressed with him, and that's why they kept him on the roster for the entire year. So I think they have some options there. I'm not interior offensive line depth. I'm really not too worried about. I mean, honestly, that was probably their biggest strength depth wise on the whole team last year.
Absolutely. And I do think that there's a good chance Chris Reed does come back, especially because they were so high on him. I mean, he even supplanted Mark Glowinski as a starter along the offensive line. And it wasn't because Glowinski was hurt. It's just because Chris Reed was outplaying him. So have Chris Reed in there. Will Fries, I mean, you did your profile on him. I did my my rookie files piece on him back in the spring. We know this guy works his butt off. I mean, and he has an obsession with football and an obsession to get better. So it'll be kind of cool to see and what he does coming into year 2. But I think really, if you're looking for depth along the offensive line, it's on the outside of those tackle positions. That's the biggest need.
Absolutely. Brock asked us a question that would take a while to answer, but we'll do it a little quick here. Do outside corners play a different role in Bradley's defense compared to Fluces? If so, how do they differ? I mean, do you want to tackle a little bit of this first here, or?
Yeah, so it's a little bit similar and a little bit different. So I mean, they do typically play a lot of deep zone, but you'll see a lot more press coverage as well. I think you'll see with the longer corners like a Faison, and kind of just watching his film. Bradley does like to get a little bit physical, and I think that's part of not only Bradley but Ron Miles as well. His kind of his attitude about defensive backs, where he likes for his defensive backs to be physical. He likes for it to go up and get some hitting in. So you'll see it'll be similarities as far as how they play, but you'll also see minute differences, just kind of the way the zones are. I mean, it's going to be, I hate how people always say that Flus ran a cover 2 and Bradley runs a cover 3, because that's not it at all. There's so much more nuance to it, but I think you'll see kind of deeper zones. You'll see more single high safety than you did with Matt Eberflus, things of that nature.
Yep. I'll be doing a film series once free agency and the draft kind of calm down and stuff. We have that complete dead period of the offseason. I'll be doing a whole film series called the summer of Bradley or something like that. You know, I'm pretty good with thinking of these alliteration names. I'll have to think of some kind of alliteration name with that. But I'll do something more just tackles everything Gus Bradley defense. So I didn't want to go too much into it tonight because it's going to be a whole offseason.
Right. It's a lot to go into.
Right. The Colts' 2 most underrated needs are QB2 and kicker. Being bad at those spots could ruin your season, and they're bad there. What do you want them to do there, and what do you think they do? I mean, I agree that kickers are bad. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I had there. From reading that. But I think they could stand to add a veteran QB2 or add a more kicker competition. They could definitely stand to do that. I mean, neither of those guys are irreplaceable. I mean, we don't even know who the kicker is right now.
Right.
It could be 1 or 2 guys.
Right. I think there'll be a kicker competition. It's going to be Hot Rod and Badgley again. So we'll see who comes out on top. I think they like both of them. I don't really look into it too much as Hot Rod. They didn't want Hot Rod to come back. I just think that Badgley was doing well. So why risk it? Why not just keep him on IR unless something happened? And then QB2, I mean, you'd like to see him add probably another veteran presence, but I mean, the Colts are really high on Sam Ehlinger. They're really high on his ability to really take over the offense and really digest it. They're high on his character, on his leadership traits. So I almost don't see. I think Sam Ehlinger will probably be QB2 again.
Yeah, I think so too. Brock says Indy might not be glamorous, but at least we get to play in a dome. And hey, that's what Matt Ryan wanted. So we're really far behind here on these. We're trying to get through them here, but you guys are just throwing them all at us. I like Matt Pryor, but when he has to go against Bosa, Jones, and Mack is what scares me. I mean, honestly, though, any left tackle they signed this year outside of Teron Armstead, which Teron Armstead averages 10 games a year the last 5 years. Outside of him, all those guys are going to scare you regardless. So I mean.
The one way to combat a pass rush is a quarterback that gets the ball out of his hands quickly, and that's exactly what Matt Ryan does.
Right, exactly. And Dustin says it here. Matt Ryan makes the O-line better. He does. We saw it with Phillip Rivers. I mean, look at it like this, right? I feel like everyone can agree the Colts O-line has a ton of talent. It's been one of the better O-lines in the league the last 4 or 5 years. Ever since Ballard's come in. But it's weird that they're one of the top teams in the entire league in sacks allowed in 2018 and in 2020. But in 2019 and 2021, they're a middling team. I mean, I wonder what the difference was between those, because it's almost been the exact same starters every year. I wonder what the big difference was across those 4 years.
You're going to have a quarterback in 2021 that more resembles those quarterbacks in 2018 and 2020 this year. Right. So or 2022, excuse me. So I think you'll see the Colts offensive line in terms of just pure numbers. They're going to get back to how they were under Luck and Rivers.
Right. I agree. Give me Chris Reed. Yeah. I mean, you guys know I'm all on board with that. Kylan Granson season. I hope we get more of him this year. I think that might be why the Colts are being a little not being as crazy aggressive at tight end right now. Not seeing that as an insurmountable need, because I think they do like Kylan Granson. He did some good things last year. I mean, his play kind of went up down the stretch last year. So I think he can be a good player.
I'm a little guilty of this as well, of kind of dismissing Kylan Granson, and I just think it's partially my own fault, because I watched how in training camp and in the off season the Colts were really getting him involved, and I was expecting a much bigger role from Kylan Granson than he got. And as you saw at the end of the year when he was starting to play better, it's because he was getting more playing time. So if Kylan Granson in his second year becomes a bigger part of this offense. And maybe behind closed doors, that's what Chris Ballard and Frank Reich have challenged Kylan Granson to do, is we want to feature you in this offense and we think you have the ability to do that, but go out there and prove and show to us that you can do that and you can deserve it. So yeah, I would love to see a huge bump from Kylan Granson, and I think you're right that could be why they're not necessarily going all in on the tight end market.
Right. And then just continue with the tight end here, Brock. Is tight end a really big need in your eyes? I thought they would give Mo and Granson a chance. It's definitely a need to at least add someone capable to that tight end group. It doesn't have to be a top. It doesn't have to be like Gronk or something like that, right? Or those type of guys, or Jared Cook. I know that was a question on Twitter, which I don't even think we're going to get to the Twitter questions. I'll just answer them on Twitter right there. But it doesn't have to be like a Jared Cook or anyone like that. But even if it's like a 4th or 5th or 6th round tight end, I think they need to add someone capable that's going to make the roster, because you can't just go in with 2. Ideally the Colts want to go in with 4 every year. So having just 2 at the moment, I think they want more.
If you're Chris Ballard, I don't think you're very comfortable having Farrod Green as your tight end 3 going into the season.
Right. So I think they'll have more guys there. Traquan Smith from the Saints. What do we think about him? Have you looked into Traquan at all?
Yeah, so he was in my piece today of one of the free agents that the Colts could possibly look into. I like him. He fits starting right off. He's a young guy. He's 26 years old. He fits the mold, the 6'2", 210. I think at the combine in 2018, he ran a 4.49 40. So he's not a burner by any means, but he can move. And I think that he is a guy that might not be your number 2 wide receiver, but I think he could be your number 3 possibly. He's got some talent, and I think you could see that when he was available last year for the Saints. I think he only played about 10 games or so, but he was still their number 3 wide receiver, even with missing 7 games on the season. So yeah, I like his upside, and I think the Colts, if they can get him for again a cheap deal, might as well take a shot on him.
Right. We're getting a lot of people with like Bames John, Rat My. What's going on here, guys? But Bames John here asks, any chance David Ojabo could be available after his injury? Look, the Colts will always take best player available, but I'd be shocked if they took another edge rusher.
Right. At some point, you have to address your other needs, and I think their big move at edge this year was Yannick Ngakoue. So they're still high, obviously, on Quiddy Pay. They're still high on Daio Adangbo. You brought Tyquan Lewis back. I don't think they're done along the defensive line. I think you'll still see a couple more additions here in free agency. Obviously, David Ojabo is a great talent, but I think the Colts could use help in other areas.
Yeah, especially a guy too who he's so bad in run defense. Like, I know it might change with going over to Gus Bradley from Eberflus. I know for a fact Eberflus would have hated David Ojabo, but the Colts' philosophy has always been stop the run and make teams beat you with the pass, which sometimes they have beat them with the pass. David Ojabo doesn't really fit that, and even though I love David Ojabo, I have him as a top 15 player in the class. The Colts almost have to go wide receiver or tight end at 42. Like, they need to add some youth to that group. So I don't see it. Do you think Kiki Cootie could take over Ty as the slot guy? Well, I don't think Ty. First of all, I don't think Ty was really the slot guy. Last year it was mostly Zach Pascal was the slot guy. Ty was mostly outside, but Kiki Cootie is a guy who I've always been very high on. I really liked him with the Texans, but it's hard for me to count on a guy who was on the practice squad all last year. I'm not going to really factor him in too much. If he comes in and we see him running with the 1s or the 2s in camp, then I'll start, accounting for him as being a real person, basically on the roster.
Right. I think more in the slot, you would probably see a guy like Ashton Doolin, like a Paris Campbell. Maybe Paris Campbell will actually take that Z wide receiver role that T.Y. Hilton had, but yeah, I think if Kiki QT does, he's got to leapfrog Strawn and Patman. Those guys are going to get the first look rather than Kiki QT.
Right. Brock asked again here about Julian Blackman. Do you think he's going to be the single high safety? Yeah. When he's healthy, he'll be the single high guy. Look, in today's NFL, safeties have to rotate. So it's like, even in Bradley's system where it's as archaic as it comes when it comes to the safety play, where there's a free and a strong. they're still going to have to rotate, but for the most part, it's going to be Julian Blackman.
Yeah, and Blackman's skill set really fits that too. And obviously we're gonna have to see how he recovers from his Achilles, because that's a big injury for a guy that's supposed to cover pretty much the entire middle of the field. So I think obviously Achilles injuries aren't what they used to be, but you're gonna want to. It's gonna take him a while once he's back to get back to his form.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think Ballard is interested in Julio? I think there's some interest there. I just don't know how serious it's going to be. I hope there's interest.
Right. And you know what Ballard says, we'll continue to look. We look from up until September and October. So it might not be this week, might not be next week, but I mean, I'm sure the Colts will do their due diligence.
Yeah. We're starting to wear out here as the stream's going along, guys. So we're going to close this off here soon. But I really wanted to highlight this question here. It's my favorite one yet. We're going to lose at least one game because Hot Rod and Money Badger aren't good, and when they have noodle legs. I agree. I completely agree. They might lose more than one game. I mean, noodle leg, maybe they should just banish that position. I'm all for it, man. Thank you.
I mean, before that injury, Hot Rod wasn't looking too bad. And seeing him in person in training camp, I'll give the boy Hot Rod some love. I mean, he looked a lot better than he did his rookie year. He was hitting the ball a lot more solid. Well, the rest of the episode is dedicated to kicker talk. But yeah, we'll see. I'm sure, like every position, the Colts are going to add competition, and I think they have faith in both of those guys.
Then we got, what is your ideal wide receiver room? I'll just say it for me, it's just kind of like a really nice scenario that I've kind of been like working with a little bit in my head. Obviously Michael Pittman Jr. is your one. Bring in a guy like Julio as your two. That if he gives you anything, awesome. If he doesn't, whatever. Whatever. And then a guy like Alec Pierce or Christian Watson at 42. I think those are both home run picks there. Paris Campbell, Ashton Doolin. And then another guy I really like, who I think I would target on day 3 for the Colts, is Velus Jones out of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. He's like 24, so he's a little older, and he will slip. But we're talking a 215, 220-pound guy who ran a 4.3 at the Combine. One of the best kick returners in all of college football. Really good after the catch, had a great Senior Bowl. I think he checks a lot of boxes for the Colts. So if he's there on day 3, and the Colts love those special teams type guys on day 3, I think he'd be a great addition. I think that wide receiver room, even though it's very risky, I think it could have the potential to be pretty solid. So that's what I would say is my ideal one with what we're working with right now. I don't know if you have a full one yet right now at all, Andrew, but what are some guys you would target for it?
I mean, I love all of that, really. I love the idea of either Watson or Pierce. I think those, when you're looking at kind of the staples of the 6 foot 200 explosive guys, those two in the second round are going to be big fits. Obviously, if a wide receiver like a Jamison Williams started to fall, which I don't think he will, obviously you'd love the Colts to kind of take that. But I do like either a combination of Julio or T.Y. Hilton. I still am high on T.Y. Hilton as far as what his leadership means to this locker room, and especially to this young wide receiver group. And now that Matt Ryan's in place, Reggie Wayne is the wide receiver coach who T.Y. is still very, very close with. I mean, he's not going to be the guy that go every game he's going to get 80 yards and a close to a score. But I do think with a capable quarterback like Matt Ryan, and just the kind of how cerebral he is and the football IQ of T.Y. Hilton, I think they can do more damage than, say, a T.Y. Hilton with a Carson Wentz. So obviously you want to have a young guy, probably a bigger guy on the outside, a veteran like a Julio Jones or T.Y. Hilton in the slot, and then you want to see a Paris Campbell, because Paris Campbell's in a contract year. You want to see what he's got. This is the make or break year for Paris Campbell, and then hopefully one of the young guys of Strawn, Patman, Doolin can even take a next step.
Absolutely. Now we're going to go a little bit rapid fire here with these last questions, guys, because I don't know about you, Andrew. I'm worn out at this point. Guys, talking for an hour straight. I mean, it's. I appreciate all the questions, though, guys. You guys are doing great. We actually had to kind of ignore the Twitter questions because you guys are throwing so many in here. But Marvell Tell, Chris Wilcox, Anthony Chesley. Do you see any of these guys stepping up, Andrew?
I could see Marvell Tell. I mean, they brought him back for a reason. They kept him on the practice squad for a reason. I think the Colts really like him, and I'm still a big belief in Marvell Tell's traits.
Yeah, Chesley, I actually like Chesley too. I think Chesley did some good things for the team, so I'm kind of intrigued by him. So we'll see what happens with that. With the quarterback making the O-line better, haven't the even year quarterbacks helped call out protections and even did it all rather than Wentz and Jacoby. I think Wentz had a lot of control of the offense last year. You could kind of see it on film. Now, was he making the right reads and right calls? We don't know, but. I do feel confident in saying Carson Wentz had basically full control of protections and call outs and stuff like that last year. It looked pretty obvious on film.
Yeah, it did, and I think especially in the games that Ryan Kelly wasn't out there. While Danny Pinter, I think, did a great job as far as his blocking in game. I still think Ryan Kelly is quite a step up as far as his football IQ and being able to identify those protections and kind of get everybody on the offensive line where they need to be.
Right. And then Nathan here, do you think the Colts could be relying on Ryan's ability to elevate lesser-known receivers rather than pursuing a fix in free agency? I don't think they're relying on it, but I feel like they feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I don't think you're not going to see the Peyton Manning effect where he takes Austin Collie or Anthony Gonzalez and makes them into a wide receiver you have to worry about. I mean, there's still the wide receivers are going to have to make their own plays, but I think you're absolutely right. They feel more comfortable that Matt Ryan will be able to get them in the right spots so they can make those plays.
Yep, exactly. Speaking of edge, what do you expect from Quiddy and Daio next year, and what will their roles be? Quiddy will likely line up mostly at the Leo position, which will be like the weak side defensive end. A lot of wide nines, a lot of getting after the passer, more than what we saw the last couple of years. Pretty excited about that. And then Daio will be, between big end and three tech, kind of a lot of what he did last year. Hopefully a year removed from that injury, though, we can see an even better Daio,
Right. This is pretty much Daio's rookie year. You give him a full off season of full health to really get his feet wet and get the speed of the game under him. And we saw Quiddy Pay start to come on at the end of the year last year. The game was starting to slow down. You're going to see him, like you said, in those wide nine, giving him more area to transition that speed to power, pin his ears back, and go after the quarterback. Doesn't hurt that Yannick Ngakwe's on the other side as well.
Yep. And then curious, Colt here, what does the offense need to add late in free agency in the draft that would maximize Ryan's skill set? Julio Jones, Christian Watson, boom, success.
I don't need to add anything. It's perfect answer.
And then Dulcich or whatever in the third round. There we go. We're good.
There we go.
We're good. This one's gonna get blocked from the stream here. Invest in a kicker. Yeah, we're gonna. How do I get this out of here? Put user in time. Okay, I'm not going to actually do it. You're close. You're on thin ice there, Brock. You're on thin ice.
I don't think the Colts will be investing a 5th round pick this year in a kicker.
Don't ruin the Pickens dream, Zach. Dude, if Pickens is there I've said this a lot, man. If Pickens is there at 42, you sprint to that podium. Even though you're not the one announcing the pick, you have to get to that podium quickly, because Pickens
he gives me a Quiddy Pay feel of, I love him, but I haven't talked about him much this draft cycle because I just don't expect him to be there. And then hopefully on draft night, it just completely shocks me and he goes to 42 and the Colts run up the cards. That was exactly what happened last year with Quiddy Pay.
Oh my gosh, dude. When Quiddy Pay fell at 21, we were all doing, flips. Everyone in Colts Nation, because we knew it was going to be Quiddy Pay.
Brandon and I were doing our live stream of the draft, and at that moment, we're thinking, oh, Darisaw is going to be there, and all of a sudden we're thinking, it was like pick, I don't know, 17, like Quiddy Pay's still on the board, and we just started to see him fall. And as soon as 21 hit, we're like, pay, turn it in now, Ballard, turn it in now.
We knew, we all knew. I mean, literally, there couldn't be anyone who thought they were going to go different there. I know there was a lot of Darisaw smoke, and I do think Darisaw might have been the pick if Quiddy Pay wasn't there, but we all knew it was Quiddy Pay.
Yeah.
We knew. Big Penn State fan, thoughts on Jahan Dotson and fit with the Colts. What do you think, Andrew? You like Dotson?
I do. He's got good hands. I think he's a solid route runner. I just don't think he fits the size that the Colts are really looking for at wide receiver. But I think he's a solid talent.
Yeah, I think he's good. I like him a lot. Explosion-wise, I think there's a good chance that the Colts could like him. He could be an outlier, but again, it's all that size. They like the big boys. I'm telling y'all, watch your Alec Pierces, watch your your Christian Watsons. Those are the guys that Chris Ballard loves. And if he goes with an outlier on day 2, I'll be the first one to say, what I thought might be wrong now. And I would love for nothing more than him to go like a Calvin Austin or a Jahan Dotson or Sky Moore. I just don't see it happening.
I think a lot of that size too is because the Colts just demand so much out of their wide receivers in the running game as well. Right. And if you're a bigger wide receiver, it's obviously going to be easier to take on these cornerbacks and safeties in the running game when you're trying to block. So it's I mean, great talent fit with the Colts and what the Colts are looking for. It would be an outlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Curious Cold asks how many draft guides need to be sold for Zach to do a deep dive on long snappers. So we're going to reevaluate a little bit here with the draft guide in the next couple of days because we finally got all the write-ups done. Every bit of write-up is done for the guide. It's about 95 to 96% complete at this point. So we're getting ready for the April 11th release. So these next 2 weeks or so, it's going to be all me promoting and basically being a showman for the guide. We're going to do something with the KC guys next week and stuff like that to really get it pushed out. But we'll reevaluate and do some more fun stuff. No more coffee involved, though. No more coffee.
we could see about even doing like a draft night live stream and kind of questions from the draft guide on that too. Go. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll do something fun with it. But we'll reevaluate in the next couple of days about some fun stuff we can do with the guide now that we're pretty much done with it. Because these last 2 weeks I've been kind of quiet trying to push it out there because I've literally just been watching offensive line and defensive line films to get this thing done. So I mean we're happy that it's pretty much done now and we can get to the point where it's okay, we can promote it a little bit more. So again, appreciate all of you guys who have purchased the draft guide. I know I just got a message that we sold 10 in the last hour. So I mean, you guys are awesome. Keep it going, and we really appreciate you. I mean, it's been awesome. This is actually what I love right here. Day 3 live stream. That's what I would do because I don't like day 1's my least favorite day
because it's so predictable.
Well, it's 4 hours for 32 picks, right?
Yeah.
And then day 2 is 4 hours for 60 picks, but then day 3 it's 4 hours for a couple hundred picks. Or
it's
whatever.
rapid fire, pick after pick after pick.
And I care more about the day 3 guys than I do the day 1 guys. I don't care about the day 1 guys. So I'm with you. I think the day 3 live stream, I'm down for that. Let's do it. I'm all for it. Yeah, day 1 sucks because the Colts usually aren't. I mean, they're not even going to be on it this year.
And especially now, because I really only thought they would jump up for a quarterback possibly. Now they got Matt Ryan. I fully expect that Thursday night to be a pretty boring night for the Colts.
Yep. So day 3 live stream. That's actually great. I might do that, honestly. I got to talk my wife into letting me stream on a Saturday for 4 hours, but we'll see. That should be fun. And then Brock, we appreciate you being active all night. We appreciate all of you guys, jumping on here, asking questions. I mean, I know I'm worn out, but it's a good thing. It's always good to be getting, a ton of questions to where you're feeling tired after an hour than, just sitting here answering it from one person over and over. So appreciate you guys. You can follow us on Twitter with our ats right there. That is your Twitter at now, right, Andrew?
Yes. Yep, it is.
Perfect, guys. So again, before we jump off here, tune out, whatever I'm going to say. Again, just a big shout out for all the purchases on the draft guide. How great you guys have been with the site this past month. Again, we hit record highs with the site, and I know a lot of that is Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan, but also you guys are interested in tuning into a lot of stuff we're writing. So just major shout out to all of you guys, and also jumping on all these live streams. Just major shout out. So we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. And we'll catch you guys, next week. We'll do some more live stream stuff next week. We'll probably take the rest of this week off from live streams, but we'll catch you guys next week. Andrew, when's your next podcast that you guys are recording?
Next podcast will be next Wednesday. So we just did an episode last night. So check that out at a Colts podcast where we broke down Matt Ryan trade, what it means for the Colts, all the fun stuff. So check that out. Usually it's on Wednesdays and Thursdays if you guys don't watch it already. I know Stats Matt is basically the third host of the show. So he's always in there, but it's always a great time.
Awesome. Well, guys, again, appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you asked any questions on Twitter and we didn't answer them here, I will probably go back and answer those here because I did want to get to those questions as well. But again, tune in next week for another Colts podcast and more live streams.